Either Russell Rusak went upstairs to make copies of a shocking and stunning document I'm going to give you. If I told you as a Jewish organization that celebrates the United Nations Palestine Day and that celebrates it on their calendar when it falls on Shabbat Hanukkah, it says in big letters United Nations Palestine Day, and then it says under it Shabbat Hanukkah. Pretty bad, right? This is the organization. It's called the OU. It's sponsoring tonight's event. It's from the 70s. We're going to give you out. I'm going to give you a copy of the pocket diary page from the 1970s. By the 1980s, we celebrated United Nations Partition Day, and by the 90s, it's gone. It's generational. I went to day school in the 50s. We had plays. I still remember my big line. I was also charette. I got to say, Havana Shira Shir Hatikva. I got to sing it afterwards. So I remember those days. So let's understand the United Nations is a very complex issue. There's nothing nastier than a relationship that's gone wrong, that's gone sour. And between the Jewish community, especially the modern Orthodox Jewish community in the United Nations, we went from celebrating the United Nations Palestine Day and giving it building above Shabbat Hanukkah to feeling more than a little distressed and upset with the United Nations. Now, what I'm doing tonight is I want to present, this is background. I'm not taking sides in issues here. I don't have the audacity to fly in and tell you what you should be doing. I leave that to everybody else. I'm deeply conscious of the fact. He was conscious of the fact that this is a painful time, tough time. It's not a time for pontification. I'm trying to avoid. I'm going to do is have a present. It's going to be a little complex here. Those keeping score at home. In the next 40 minutes or so, I want to talk about 3 sets of 3. The first set of 3 is totally unrelated to the United Nations topic. I gave you the tease about the shocking United Nations Palestine Day OU program, but we don't do it anymore. I just saved our Shkas in America. There are 3 stages of 3 stories of 3. The first story has nothing at all to do with the United Nations, but I think you'll find it important and interesting. 50 years ago, last October, the state of Israel endured a surprise attack on the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur. Faulty intelligence, questions how it happened, missed signals. It was not 2023 when the President of the United States called Benjamin Netanyahu on the first day of the war and said, we have munitions and weapons stored in Israel for emergency use in NATO. They're yours. It was not 2023. In 2024, the United States has so far sent 450 cargo planes filled with full of free munitions, high caliber weapons. Or the United States has put 2 aircraft carriers and a nuclear submarine to send messages to certain people. Again, we can all quibble and talk, myself at the top of the list, about what the United States could have done, should have done, might have done in previous years and currently, but it's no comparison to 1973. For the first 25 years of the State of Israel, there was a virtual arms embargo. The same Harry Truman recognized Israel, placed an arms embargo on sending arms to Israel. Yes, there were a couple of breakout exceptions. Israel paid top dollar for some weapons in the Kennedy years, Johnson years. But as war became more and more imminent in 73, the United States made it very clear that it was neutral. And the 2 loudest voices for neutrality were James Schlesinger, the Secretary of Defense, a Meshumit, a Jew who had become a Christian, who very eloquently said, I meet the press the Sunday before the war, said the first day after Yom Kippur, he said that if the United States takes sides in this war, it will bring the Soviets in, it will inflame fury throughout the Arab and Muslim world, it will endanger American troops and bases. And the other guy was Henry Alfred Kissinger, a man who was raised in an Orthodox home, left Yahoo and eventually intermarried, who was famously argued we must be even-handed so we can be an arbitrator, we can help bring peace. We can't take sides. And I quote, he said, we can't tilt in either direction, end quote. I had worked for a great American, Hubert Humphrey, 2 years before his presidential campaign. He had run for the nomination again in 1972. The year before, he lost to a man named George McGovern. They picked up the phone and he called his arch enemy, the man who beat him for the presidency, Richard Nixon. And I, as Scoop Jackson did, virtually everyone on the Jackson and Humphrey's team ended up working for Richard Nixon's re-election. I was a national vice chairman of Richard Nixon's re-election campaign, Democrats for Nixon, unindicted to this day, and very proud of that. Very proud. My great achievements. I worked for Nixon. I'm proud of it. So listen to the story. Hubert Humphrey called me. It was the second or third day, Chol Moed Sukkot, so the war's like a week old. And he said, David, I just got a call from Moshe Dayan, the defense minister of Israel. There you have 3 days worth of ammunition left. 3 days. He told me it'll be the end of the Jewish state. I understand there's a movie about Golda Meir which has the story in it. But until now, I mean, he called everybody he could call to get help. Humphrey said, I set up an appointment, 4 of us, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. Jacob Javits and Ed Brooke, the only African American in the Senate, both Republicans. Scoop Jackson and Hubert Humphrey. The 4 of them are meeting with Richard Nixon at 4 o'clock today, he said. Nixon said he's inviting 2 other people to the meeting, Schlesinger and Ed Humphrey, and Kissinger. You can get through them, he says. You got the airlift. Okay, what can I do? I can call my Rebbe. My 2 great Rebbeim, Rav Yoshe Ber and Rav Aaron Soloveitchik. 4 years by Rav Yoshe, anyone knows Rav Yoshe Ber knows I called Rav Aaron. It's not the thing you call Rav Yoshe Ber about. Yeah. I called Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, and he said to me the following. There's only one war in the entire Torah. I've asked, this is my 14th time I've spoken on some variation of this theme, not the UN part. In seminaries here, and every seminary I open up with this story. This is my 14th time, I believe. 1 to go in the nation Torah. And I asked the students the following question. There's only one milchama in the entire Torah, said Soloveitchik, where the Jews are commanded in detail to fight a people who had not attacked us. What was that war? Who's it with?
Midian.
What?
Midian.
Midian! Terrific. You can have a scholarship to land a college woman. Yeah, that's another makes other issues there, but okay. Very good, very good. You're the second person to answer the question. And if you look at his detailed instructions, God says, Elef Lamata. He said 3 times Elef Lamata. Says Yerushalmi. You know why it says 3 times Elef Lamata? Because there are 3 groups of 1,000, said the Marin. 1 group goes to, from each tribe goes to fight. 1 group goes to the battlefield to provide backup, support, supplies. 1 group stays in Machane Yisrael to daven 24/7 in shifts and cry their hearts out in daven. Said Rav Aaron Ashrenu, we are the 3rd group now. We in America, he said, can daven, do chesed. We can make an impact to Kiddush Hashem and help Achenu B'nai Yisrael. Ashreichem, you've been the 2nd group during this war. You've been on the battle lines. I'm in awe. Since my wife and I have been here now for 10, 11 days, I'm in awe of the resiliency, the emunah, the bitachon, and the strength of Achenu B'nai Yisrael here in Eretz Yisrael. I wanted to start with that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could I ask you to be a little more close to the...
Oh, I'm sorry. Now, you want to know what happened that day at the White House? Anyone want to hear what happened? Hey, anyone interested? I'm not forget about it. No. I couldn't tell you this until this year because... Thank you. Oh, we can pass these out. Everyone can have their... Don't try to know the names of the girls are on this and everything. But this is a pocket page of the... Here's the pocket diary. Here's a page of it from the mid-70s. So you can see with your own eyes the United Nations Palestine Day is above Shabbat Hanukkah and how it describes how important a holy day it is. Someone asked me what I whited out. I actually whited out the name of the couple who's going to Shabbat lunch that Shabbat, since they're not any married to each other anymore, so they didn't need to have their names here. Okay, here, everyone gets one. Okay, you got something for the... Let's continue now. When Hubert Humphrey told me the story, he told me I could not repeat the story as long as any of the participants were alive. I had lunch with Shimon Peres, Senator Moynihan for 20 years. I had lunch with Shimon Peres in the 21st century, and he said to me, I've heard varying reports about that meeting. I said, yes. He said, I've heard the following, yes. Is that correct? Yes. Elder statesman, future president of Israel. I said, well, You've heard about it, I heard. That's all I can say. He had the story right. This is what happened. Each of the 4 senators made an emotional plea to Nixon. A rational plea. What's good for America? What's important? Schlesinger gave a blistering response. The President of the United States turned to his Metternich, to the architect of realpolitik, Henry A. Kissinger. Said Henry, according to Hubert Humphrey, Henry Kissinger began to cry. Mr. President, I lost 87 relatives in the Holocaust. What do you want me to say? At which point Richard Nixon turned to Schlesinger and said, call Prime Minister Meir, send her whatever she needs. And we did. And Badera Teva, an intermarried Jew who had wandered so far, had a hooray tshuva of some sort and helped save the state of Israel. And since that day, the United States has continued to ship weapons to Israel, sell weapons to Israel, and give weapons to Israel. Because the United States has given Israel since that day an average of over $2.5 billion in aid a year. And it all started with Henry Kissinger's crime. Okay, let's just keep that in mind. Okay, so we have our 3 groups. I'll show you, you're the second group. Now let's talk about the United Nations. I worked for 20 years for Daniel Patrick Moynihan. He wrote a famous book about the UN called A Dangerous Place. Yeah, it still is. The UN does not create problems, wrote Moynihan. The UN is easily manipulated, where El Salvador has the same vote as the United States, where islands in the Caribbean with 11,000 people have the same vote as China. The General Assembly is easily manipulated. The United Nations reflects and magnifies problems. But we're going to talk about 3 United Nations moments that are important. And the third one, I think, will help explain why they're rational people, reasonable people I used to respect, who are willing to defend what Hamas did. As a major American Jewish activist said in a very moving article in the New York Times, the people I've marched for my whole life would march for me right now. And I think the third of the UN story will help explain why. But I'm going to sprinkle those, this is going to be very confusing now. This was a class, my students would complain already. But it's not a class, there's no test afterwards, don't worry. I'm going to intermingle those 3 UN events. I said there were 3 sets of 3. Iron Salvation's 3 groups, of which you're the second. The 3 UN moments are going to be intermingled with 3 periods of the betrayal of the Palestinians. So we're going to keep them out. We have 3 betrayals of the Palestinians. Palestinians are a terribly betrayed people. They're designer people, created as a means to an end. Immanuel Kant once, Yosher Salvation wrote his doctorate on, I actually heard this line not from Kant, never read Kant, I heard the line from Yosher Yosher Salvation used to quote Kant, and he said that Kant said no human being should be used for a means to an end. Every person is an end to themselves. The Palestinian people were created as a means to an end, which we will discuss. And I think it's sad, and I think they've been betrayed, and I think they've been abused. And most of the abuse has not come from the state of Israel or the people of Israel. In fact, the vast majority will see it not. But let's talk about the 3 UN moments. You know, and again, I'm going to get a little controversial here. I might offend someone. My Rebbeim have taught me, Salvation Brothers have taught me, that there's nowhere in the normative mainstream Jewish tradition that posits an independent Jewish polity, I'm talking political science now, on the eastern littoral of the Mediterranean before the coming of the Holy Messiah. We longed, we davened, we prayed, we hoped, but we expected what happened when the Holy Messiah came. And the nations of the world so abused us. The cauldron of Eastern Europe, that swirling vortex of cultural, political, racial, religious anti-Semitism, climaxes in the creation, or progress in the Holocaust, but before that in the creation of political Zionism in the late 19th century. Jews were always in Eretz Israel. I have some Turkish polling data for you. This is not from Hadassah or JNF, it's from the Turk-Ottoman census. 1840, 10,000 Jews and 400,000 Arabs between the river and the sea. 1880, no Zionist movement yet. 20,000 Jews, 550,000 Arabs. 550. 1914, 85,000 Jews. 60,000 live on the Chalukah, which means they're very, very Orthodox. They want no part in the Zionist enterprise. They were the vast majority of the community. 60,000 out of 85,000 around the Hanukkah. About 700-something thousand Arabs. And then the Balfour Declaration. And the British say there'll be a Jewish homeland here. And Arab nationalism begins to churn. They didn't call themselves Palestinians. We'll see how that changes. They call themselves Arabs. And certain nationalism develops, culminating in some ugly moments. And time after time, the Jews offer to share. And as Abid Ban put it, the other side never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Climaxing in the first of our 3 UN moments, the United Nations vote on November 29th, 1947, United Nations Palestine Day, to create 2 states, a Jewish state and an Arab state, in the British Mandate of Palestine. But let's discuss that Jewish state. It did not include Yerushalayim or Kodesh. Under pressure from the Vatican, Jerusalem was an internationalized city. It did not include Beersheba. It did not include Ashdod, Ashkelon, Yaffo, or Sfat. Jews danced in the streets and thanked either Karl Marx or God, depending on their perspective. They were ecstatic. It says right here in the Orthodox Union Diary, brought great joy to all Jewry. No kids was found, by the way. But the Arabs, had they accepted the deal, they could have created Switzerland. They could have had a very nice little, in fact, there was a famous story that one of the members of the United Nations Commission, it was from Iran, said, "This is wonderful," he said. "The Jews will teach the Arabs how to have Switzerland deal. Jew Switzerlands." Well, it didn't exactly work out that way because no one asked the Arabs living in Eretz Israel. 5 Arab armies clearly advocating genocide invaded Eretz Israel. Mohammed Abbas, who's in his, I think, 14th year of his 4-year term as head of the Palestine Authority, gave an interview a few years ago where he said he remembers as a boy, 1947, hearing the Arab radio stations calling on all Arabs to leave or they would be killed. Yes, Benny Morris, other Jewish, Mr. Thomas Sagan, other Israeli historians argue there were Jews who chased some Arabs out. But even those historians agree the vast majority of Arabs who fled on their own because of the instructions from their Arab brethren to do so. To their great credit, I think 200,000 Arabs risked their lives and stayed in Eretz Israel, and stayed in the Jewish state. And their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren remain the backbone of the Israeli Arab community, despite everything, including the effort on October 7th to change that, have remained, according to everyone I've spoken to in the Israeli government through the years, overwhelmingly loyal to the state of Israel. That was true. Shimon Peres once said, the average Israeli Arab thinks of himself as an Arab, not a Palestinian, grows 1 year older every year. And that was 20 years ago, he said that. But still, Chazdei Hashem, these Arabs are still alive and stay here. And they're the only Arabs in the Arab world who vote in democratic elections on a regular basis. The only Arabs in the Arab world who have freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion. Let's keep that in mind. Say that on the college campus today and see what happens to you. Okay. Then, that being said, the Arab armies captured 86% of the land promised. This is very important. The Arab armies captured 86% of the land north of Beersheba promised to an Arab state. 86% of the land above the Negev. And they promptly, of course, created a Palestinian state. Of course not, they stole the land. Transjordan renamed itself Jordan. It annexed East Jerusalem and Yehuda and Shomron and declared it part of Jordan. Egypt, further south, militarily annexed Gaza. No one made it a state for the Arabs. On the contrary, 500,000 Arabs fled to Gaza, where they promptly were dubbed the Palestinian refugees. Now, I asked every seminary at high school I spoke in, 30 high schools in the United States since the war started, and I asked the same question everywhere. Are any of you descended from indigenous American tribes, Iroquois, Seminole, Navajo? One hand went up, one base Yaakov. Okay, but the rest of you, probably not. Anyone here's family came after 1950? No. A lot of hands were carrying hand, Russians were carrying. Do you see yourself a refugee? Of course not. But the United Nations, the Palestinians promptly declared the Arabs declared that these people in Gaza, these people in camps in Lebanon, these people in camps in Jordanian-occupied West Bank, next West Bank, they are refugees. And their children and children's children are refugees, so-called Dorot. December 1949, second UN moment. The United Nations created something called the United Nations UNRWA. We all are big fans of UNRWA, aren't we? So I did some research. Who created UNRWA? Was it a Soviet plot? The Soviet bloc abstained on the vote for UNRWA. They said, let Britain play for it. They created the problem. Israel co-sponsored the resolution to create UNRWA. Scouts Honor. I'm not making this up. They co-sponsored the resolution. So I asked around, I wish I had known this 40 years ago. I would have asked people like Shimon Peres. But he was long gone, but this is recently I discovered this. I found 3 arguments in the contemporary literature. College professors are supposed to do so they pay us for it. I found 3 arguments on why in the world Israel co-sponsored the resolution to create UNRWA. The first, anyone want to guess the reason? Anyone want to guess the reason?
They paid for it.
Very smart. That is one reason. The reason was, let the United Nations foot the bill. Why in the world we're going to be asked to pay for these people within 5 years? That's one argument. Argument 2 is Ralph Bunche had just completed the famous ceasefire talks now on the roads. The Arabs were not talking to the Israelis, they were in separate rooms. Ralph Bunche won a Nobel Peace Prize for it. And that's not the first or last time Israel paid a price at a ceasefire. Second argument was that Israel agreed to this as part of the ceasefire agreement. And the third argument is the most fascinating one. And I heard this from a colleague at the university, and I can't prove it either way, but it makes to me a lot of sense. There were 250,000 displaced Jews in 1949 still in camps in Eastern Europe. In Western Europe, 50,000 Jews displaced by all were still in DP camps until 1951. And this resolution, the way it was worded, could be easily interpreted to get the United Nations to start paying the bills that the Joint Distribution Committee had been paying. Whatever reason, the reason is Israel in support of it. But within 2 years, Israel did not support the United Nations voting at the request of the Arab states that these people's children and children's children, so-called Dorot, are Palestinian refugees, which is astounding. It's astonishing. It redefines the word refugee. But it creates, again, the designer people, Palestinian people. Now, who are Palestinians? So I have in my office a map of issued by the first map, I think, of the Palestinian Liberation Organization in 1959. East Jerusalem is not part of Palestine, it's part of Jordan. The West Bank is not part of Palestine, it's part of Jordan. Gaza is not part of Palestine, it's part of Egypt. Gaza is, Palestine is the only area, the Eretz Israel, occupied by Israel. Palestine is redefined by the Six-Day War, suddenly the whole West Bank, all of the area becomes Palestine as well. Palestine and the Palestinians have a right to return to their home, and which by definition means the dismantling of the State of Israel. So that's period 1. It ends because they Hashem with the miracles of the Six-Day War, and some of us can so vividly remember. And Israel conquers the West Bank. It conquers Gaza and Sinai, Golan and Jerusalem, and offers to give everything back, except for Jerusalem, in a peace agreement. And I think the Arabs might have said yes. We'll see in a minute why I believe that. And the Soviets said no. Period 1, the Palestinians were a cat's paw of the Arab states, trying to create a mythos of a displaced people who had a right to replace the Israelis in their homeland, in their homes. Second period, they're a cat's paw of the Soviet effort to dismantle, to fight the United States. The Designs and Racism Resolution, November 10th, day before David Tworsky's birthday. November 10th, 1975, declares Zionism to be a form of racism. Zionism to be a form of colonialism. Let's talk a minute about colonialism. This is the third, I'm going to give you the third United Nations moment now. This moment to me is the most important one. This United Nations moment is not talked about enough in our community. I think this explains the college campuses. This explains some learned people who are saying lunatic things. This explains to me a lot of the rhetoric. And it all starts with the story of Goa, G-O-A. Where is Goa, folks?
India.
Yay, good for everyone. Goa was the first European colony outside of Europe since the Roman Empire. It was created by Portugal in the 15th century. And the centuries go by, and the British come. There's never a country. India's like Jordan. There's never a country called Iraq. There's never a country called India in history. There was a subcontinent called India. There's never one country. And the British conquer almost all of the Indian subcontinent, which is now 5 countries, except for a little pimple called, and 3 French ports called Goa. 1947, the British give their independence to India and Pakistan and Sri Lanka and Ceylon and Burma, etc., etc. And the British, the Indian government says, you're missing Goa. Not ours, it's the British, the Portuguese. Goa is part of India, we want it back. Portuguese say, you're crazy, there was never a country called India. Goa is part of Portugal. It was ours centuries before the British arrived and united the country. And this argument goes on until one fine summer day in June of 1961, when the Indian Army and Air Force does a surprise attack on Goa, slaughters the Portuguese garrison, and declares Goa part of India. Repatriated, liberated Goa! The United States is beyond angry. We demand an emergency meeting of the Security Council of the United Nations. Aldi Stevenson, our silver-tongued ambassador, delivers a speech in which he compares the India of Gandhi and Nehru to the Japanese invading China, Mussolini invading Italy, and Adolf Hitler invading Poland. And Krishna Menon, the acid-tongued, long-winded foreign minister of India, sitting there, soaking it all in. And Krishna Menon has a chance to respond. People expect a long speech. Krishna Menon said 4 words and sat down to a standing ovation. On the morning of October 7th, I remember those 4 words. Certainly on October 8th, I remember those 4 words as I'm telling everyone the story. What did Krishna Menon say? Colonialism is permanent aggression. If I come up to you in the street and pull out a knife and you have a gun, you're not committing assault and battery, except maybe in San Francisco, if you defend yourself and shoot me. If I come to your house and I chase you upstairs with a gun, and you lock yourselves in the bathroom, your family, and I get drunk on your liquor cabinet and you come down and hit me over there with a baseball bat, you have not committed aggression. You're defending your house. Colonialism is permanent aggression. Half a millennia later, we can come on a surprise attack and slaughter you. When Krishna Menon said this, the colonial empires were folding. They were folding. Those of us old enough to remember that map with all those different colors on it. The Belgian Empire was gone in 1960. The Dutch even before that. The French and the British are gone in the 60s in a blur. The Italian by the 60s. The great Portuguese Empire by 75. The Spanish Empire a couple of years later. Rhodesia and South Africa get white rulers replaced. As far as the Soviet mantra went, there was only one place on earth where European people are ruling, a non-European place of the world. Folks, we're sitting here in the capital of the last colony. And colonialism is permanent aggression. And that is accepted by a large majority of the nations of the United Nations to this day. And it's a mentality which, unfortunately, as long as Israel is projected and seen as a colonial entity occupying a non-European part of the world, you will have those defending the indefensible. Okay, so we have our second period, the Soviet-dominated period. Not every Arab leader was happy with this. And a man named Anwar Sadat said to Walter Mondale later, I am tired of my children dying for someone else's foreign policy. He had the guts to fly to Tel Aviv. He made peace with Israel. We all must remember that speech to the Knesset. Israel gave back every inch of Egyptian soil that it conquered, except for one little finger of land. Walter Mondale, in his autobiography, tells the story. He was Vice President of the United States at Camp David. Menachem Begin says to Anwar Sadat, I don't think I have to explain to this crowd who Begin and Sadat were. I spoke in seminaries, girls put their hands like, who's this guy Begin, you know? Is that a road? You know, it's very, let's just say it was distressing. That first story I told you before, so the head of one seminary said, Dr. Luchins, they've never heard of Hubert Humphrey. They have never heard of Moshe Dayan. You've got to explain who people are. I think this crowd heard of Menachem Begin or Sadat. Begin turns to Sadat and says, and you're taking Gaza back. Sadat jumps up and says, it's a trap, it's a trick. Turns to Jimmy Carter and says, I'm leaving. I will, if the words Gaza are mentioned again. He couldn't take Gaza back. Because Gaza had been created as the prima facie case for the right of Palestinian return, and he couldn't repudiate the right of Palestinian return to their homeland. He's making peace with Israel, but nothing in that peace treaty, it says so in the Egyptian reservation, nothing in that peace treaty addresses the status of Jerusalem or the Palestinian right of return. Israel, of course, made a sequel reservation, plus Cyrus Vance, saying that nothing in the treaty is the opposite. Sadat's killed for doing it anyhow. That's the second period. It ends because they Hashem with the collapse of the Soviet Union on December 25th. Some of you may remember what day that is. 1990, it's not in the OU diary. 1991. Within 2 years, to our shock, I was working for the Senate then, I still remember getting a phone call about it, how stunned we were in America that the Israelis had made peace with the Palestine Liberation Organization. Arafat, the uber terrorist, the man who ordered the murder of Israeli athletes in Munich and our diplomats in Sudan, the man who signed off on the hijacking and blowing of airplanes. I was in the South Lawn of the White House. Aaron Soloveitchik said, don't look in his eyes and you shake hands with him, he's a Russia. Senator Moynihan said, you shake hands with that bastard, I'll fire you. So obviously I didn't want to lose my job, so I did not avoid, a light moment, a very funny story. There were 3 people who wouldn't get in the receiving line. Pat Moynihan, myself, and Jim. Remember James Baker, Jim Baker? He wouldn't get in the receiving line. So Pat Moynihan says to Jim Baker, you're really mad at your friend Arafat for making peace with Rabin, aren't you? For those who knew Jim Baker, you can appreciate he's still alive. 100 years old, kind of. Back to our story. So this was shortly before Rosh Hashanah. Monday before Rosh Hashanah, Motzi Yom Kippur. Less than 2 weeks later, Pat Moynihan and I had to do it with Shimon Peres, foreign minister later, prime minister and president of Israel. And Senator Moynihan says, Shimon, how in the world can you make peace with these terrorists? He said 3 reasons. I want to point to everything else I said today. Remember these 3 reasons of Peres. To me, this is amito. This is the heart of what a lot of what's going on. So the first reason is, he said, Soviet Union has ceased to exist. They were the main manipulator of the Arab-Israeli conflict for their own selfish purposes. The bear is in the cave. The bear is badly wounded. The bear is licking its wounds. It's going to come out really angry. We've got to cut the best deal we can with the Palestinians before the Russians are there to advocate on their behalf. There are many people, I've spoken to them, and I think they have a good case that Vladimir Putin played a major role on October 7th. We'll see why in a little while. The second reason he said was, and there's a little history here, the year before, the United States had badly weakened Saddam Hussein in the first Persian Gulf War. Now, Saddam Hussein was a very secular Muslim leader. He made statues of himself all over the country, not a lot of statues. They served alcohol in public. Iraq was the most secular Muslim country. It was Sunni, secular, and it was the buffer against the highly religious Shiite Persian theocracy of Iran. You've badly weakened Saddam Hussein. As a result, the Iranians are going to be doing great mischief in the area. And again, if it wasn't for 2 fleets and a nuclear submarine, I think they would have done even more. They and their proxies would have done even more mischief in the last few months. Third reason he said there's 2 groups here. The Palestine Authority, and he admitted that Israel originally helped fund Hamas. He said Hamas. He said, and if tomorrow we declare that every Jew in Israel is moving to Denmark at the request of the Danish government, we're closing down the state of Israel. The PLO would say, don't leave so fast. We have to have parades, parties, barbecues. So nice of you to leave. Hamas would say, you can't leave. We have to kill you. There's a difference, he said. And Israel tried. It tried. Remember, the Big Netanyahu was the prime minister who made the deal. Why? To get back Hebron. 102 members of the Knesset. 102 members of the Knesset voted for that. 102 members of the Knesset. Remember that in the summer of 2000, Ehud Barak offered 98% of the West Bank, equivalent land in the Negev, to take the place of the 2%. The Arab urban sprawl outside of East Jerusalem, the Muslim quarter, the Christian quarter, and Har HaBayit. Bill Clinton said to Pat Moynihan, look, the Jews are not getting the Temple Mount until the Messiah comes, and the Palestinians are not going back to their homeland under the shopping malls in Tel Aviv. So this is the deal. They signed, they give up the right of return, Israel gives up the Temple Mount. I said to myself, oh, that's going to be fun. Anyway, the president of Egypt endorsed it. The king of Saudi Arabia, I don't trust the Saudis, but he claims he endorsed it. The prime minister of Indonesia, president of Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim country, went on national television and said, in Allah's name, I beseech you to take this arrangement. Arafat couldn't give an answer. Dennis Ross was a fabulous person who was the chief negotiator for Ronald Reagan, George Herbert Walker Bush, and Bill Clinton. 16 years of his life he devoted to the Middle East. He met over 200 times with Arafat. And Dennis Ross says he went to Arafat. I heard this from Dennis. He went to the cabin at Camp David. He said, Chairman Arafat, do you have your place in history books? Yes, said Arafat. Right next to the picture of Sadat and the picture of Rabin, who were both killed for making peace with their own people. Even if he wanted to, again, he was a pach, then he wouldn't. He wasn't prepared to sign the end of belligerency. He wasn't prepared to sign giving up the right of return. And in the end, he launched the second intifada instead. Israel tried again. Under President Bush's strong tutelage, Ariel Sharon. I've read Condoleezza Rice's autobiography. Anyone has any question here what role President Bush plays in it, just read Condoleezza Rice's autobiography. She describes how the Saudis assured them that if Israel leaves Gaza and there'll be a free and democratic election on the West Bank and Gaza, the Palestine Authority will wipe Hamas and there'll be a PA-controlled, unified Palestine, and they can make peace with Israel, and you won the Nobel Peace Prize. That's it. There was one aide, one young woman working for Condoleezza Rice who said, it's not going to happen. Hamas will win in Gaza. You probably never heard of her. Her name was Elizabeth Cheney. She was a pretty famous congresswoman afterwards. And she was right. Condoleezza Rice writes in the book. You can look it up. She's on her exercise machine early in the morning. She has to call from Liz Cheney. We just got the word from the Israelis. Hamas won in Gaza. And they promptly drove out or killed the PA functionaries in Gaza and turned Gaza into a functioning terror state. I think Hillary Clinton had a good line on that. When they asked her, ceasefire now! It was a ceasefire. It was Secretary of Statement I negotiated. Hamas broke it on October 7th. Hamas has never acknowledged the right of Israel to exist. Hamas has never repudiated a part of its charter which calls for killing every Jew in the world. Hamas represents that extreme rejectionist voice. So, but the Israelis were getting
That is
around.
supported by the Palestinians.
Again, I'm just reporting to you, sir. I've seen pulled out on that both ways. Thank God Israeli Arabs are not. It's a very complex thing. I'm not sure, by the way, if I were living in Palestine, it's okay to ask me that poll question. I'm sure I'd be willing to answer what I think. Would you? I love polls taken in police states. You don't know who's asking the question, right? So to continue, I'm not here to whitewash anyone. I have no. If you think I am, then you've got the wrong guy. I'm here trying very hard to explain to you best I can in the background. To continue, we're almost done. For those who are bored silly, we are almost done. I'll have the questions very shortly. I was with the Orthodox Union leadership of your Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, in the summer 2019. He said, we're tired of inside out, it's not working. We're going to do outside in. We're going to go back to the model, the original model of the 70s and 80s. We're going to get all the outside Arab states to make peace until the Palestinians either become irrelevant or go along with the deal. To the credit of Donald Trump, the Abraham Accords, 4 Arab states on the periphery made peace with Israel. To the credit of Joseph Biden, we were on the verge of a deal with Saudi Arabia. Jacob Sullivan, the National Security Advisor of the United States, unfortunately the first line in his obituary, no matter what he accomplishes in his life, will be the article he wrote for Foreign Affairs, which came out on October 9th this year. It's called The New Middle East. We're on the cusp of peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the United States will work to neutralize Iranian influence. And he writes, and I quote now, Gaza and Hamas have become irrelevant. It came out October 9th. Passover programs in Dubai. Mincha, Minyanim in Saudi Arabia. There's an iconic picture all over the world of a Chol HaMoed Mincha Minyan in Saudi Arabia in front of the Great Mosque. Picture of Hagba. Did anyone see that picture? It's all over the world. Showing them the guy doing Hagba. That's not the reason for October 7th. October 7th was planned long before that. But it certainly gave them this reason, an anger. They didn't want to become irrelevant. And Putin and Iran have the reasons also for wanting this to happen. They did something so vile and cruel, so awful and disgusting, they sort of how to respond in a way that they could then play the victim card. And they could, their hope was, I think everything I've read, I don't know, I'm not in their heads, but I've heard, I do a lot of reading of this. I've not seen anything that goes against the following supposition. The people who authorized and organized and in great detail planned this atrocity were hoping to have an Israeli response that would result in the Saudi peace deal going down the drain, the Egyptians tearing up. Yes, Gaza is an open-air prison, and the Egyptians have been holding the keys for half a century. Yes, it is. Egyptians want it that way. The Egyptian peace agreement will get torn up. The Jordanian peace agreement will get torn up. Israel's pre-67 Arab citizens would join the Arabs on the West Bank and rise up and revolt. Hezbollah would come charging in the north. Chazdei Hashem. Much that hasn't happened. Hopefully it won't happen. But there's no question what their plan to go was. That being said, I've had the 3 United Nations moments. The UN vote to create, that the Arabs didn't take the deal, that they invaded. The vote to create UNRWA, which turned around from a humanitarian effort for Israel support, it turned into a mandate for eternal refugeehood and victimhood to be used as an excuse, poster children to destroy the state of Israel. And thirdly, the Christian Amendment moment, colonialism is permanent aggression, which is the mantra of just, and by the way, in the United States today, my friends, it's very generational. Americans over 65, recent Pew study, over 2/3 support Israel over the Palestinians. These are Americans who remember a weak Israel, a tiny Israel. You know, there's Pat Moynihan's best friend in the Senate. Senator Moynihan in the Senate, his best friend was a guy who stuttered. Moynihan once said, he's the most smartest man I know, whenever he opens his mouth, he proves otherwise. His name is Joe Biden. So Moynihan once told me the following story. He said, Biden told him, I only saw my father cry once.
I didn't hear that. What is that?
I only saw my father cry once.
Right. It was November 29th, 1947. My father, I said, I said, Daddy, why are you crying? He said, because the United Nations is supposed to give the Jewish people a state. So all the things Jewish people have suffered, they're going to have a homeland now. You know, those things, whatever they say, Biden's memory, he remembers that. That's pretty good, he remembers that. Thank God the President's name in the United States is not Sanders right now, or Warren. That's all I can say. I don't usually discuss American politics, I just did. Okay, so Americans under 65, between 35 and 65, slight tilt towards Israel. Americans under 35, pro-Palestinian. Americans 18 to 25, Saudi bar the door. TikTok. Social media. The heads of the Jewish Voices for Palestine in some of the major universities in America spent 12 years in day school and a year or 2 in seminary yeshiva in Israel. They can out-Jew anybody else. So let's understand what we're up against. You know, so I want to end up with if I may, 2 stories, I'll take questions. Story one. I read this story years ago, and I went to look for the Sefer on Shemini Atzeret morning in America when it started to dawn to us the horrors of what had happened. I will confess to this. We have an Israeli fellow who was in our Beit Knesset. I he came to us for both days, both meals Shmini Atzeres. By us, Shmini Atzeres was Erev Yom Tov. We had to have 2 meals on Shabbat. My wife and I begged him to come back Saturday night after a kafas and bring his phone. And then seeing us reading all these news reports, we were like, oh. I get the New York Times. It's a nice blue envelope on my front porch. I come out at Simchat Torah morning, and my paper's been opened. It's been read by about 22 people on the way to Minyan. They were wondering what was going on. So it was pretty painful. I went and found this book, because I remembered the story. And I read it at the table, at the Sudah. I read it at the Sudah table, Simchat Torah lunch, to our family. Here's the story. In the Beit Medrash of Reb Chaim Sonnenfeld, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah 1929, that Elul was the worst massacre of Jews in Eretz Israel since the Crusaders killed every Jew in Jerusalem in 1099. The Jewish community of Hebron was destroyed. There were pogroms in Yerushalayim and Haifa. Jewish blood flowed freely. And in the Beit Medrash, Reb Chaim Sonnenfeld on the second day Yontiv, one bacher says to the other bacher, "It's the fault of the boys who play football on Shabbos. The Eibusher, that's God, has removed his protection from us." Sonnenfeld in his 80s, the Rav Yerushalayim, head of the Eidei Charedim, turns around and says, "I think you're wrong. Those boys are Tzidukei Nishba. Their parents were the fathers and grandfathers, that's my grandfather was, great-grandfather, my grandfather were in the Tsar's army. They don't know Usman Shabbos, these boys. The Tzidukei Nishba." I'll bet the Abishur was a lot angrier at boys who say Lashon Hara on Yom Adin in the Beis Medrash than on boys who play football on the day they don't know Shabbos. My friend sitting right here last night, my friend Zev Lev said, doesn't say in the Gemara, check your mezuzahs. It doesn't say check, someone that says check your mice. Well, my stuff at the top of the frontal line, myself at the frontal line, all of us have to think and worry and wonder. We're supposed to Gemara on the daf, I think it was the day before the war, it was the day before the war, it was Shana Rabbah, the daf said, you're supposed to see the world half guilty, half innocent, and you can change it. All of us have to. Myself, I see the chesed here is phenomenal, I stand in awe of what I see. We all, myself and the top of the line, have to do more and try harder. Okay? Now I'm going to end with an upbeat story. Can you imagine an upbeat story after this speech, an upbeat story? Okay. I'm going to try an upbeat story. A little name dropping. Hubert Humphrey told me the following mice they heard from Harry Truman. Name dropping. Humphrey was the senator from 1948. Harry Truman was president. He came true on the death of Franklin Roosevelt. He told me the following mice. That when Truman became president, he gave him a big batch of papers to sign. He knew nothing. He'd been left out in the cold. He didn't know he had an atomic bomb, for goodness sakes. Stalin knew more than he did about it. He had a whole batch of papers to sign. One paper said, the German people are so brainwashed, so consumed with anti-Semitism and race hatred that we may not send any American Jewish, they probably said Negro, which is the polite way they said it, Negro GIs into Germany. The occupation, we just about conquered Germany April 45, but the occupation, the president is ordering the armed services to keep all Jewish and black soldiers out of Germany. I took the paper, said that's not what we fought the war for. I threw it in the fireplace. Second paper said, the Japanese are subhuman fighting machines. Please remember that 150,000 Japanese, some of them third and fourth generation Japanese, some who had fought in World War, been crippled fighting in World War I for the United States, from Seattle and Spokane, from California, were put in camps, not death camps, God forbid. And when we actually called them concentration camps initially, so someone else gave concentration camps a really bad name. So we'll call them detention centers in Montana and Idaho, and in Wyoming, because they were Japanese. Oh my God, we can't trust them. And this memo said, according to Truman, Japanese are subhuman fighting machines. They're trained from birth, earliest childhood to be kamikazes. Remember that word, kamikaze?
Yeah. To
kill or be killed. Suicide bombers. Walking suicide bombers, every one of them. It will take 2 million Americans. By the way, why we made the deal with Stalin to get him into the war, because we didn't know if the bomb would work. We thought we need Russian soldiers to be, help us. 2 million soldiers to occupy Japan, and we expect 1 million casualties. True to go to paper through the fireplace. Folks, there's not one documented case, not one documented case of a lone wolf, German or Japanese soldier or civilian attacking an American soldier after World War II. I met with your Prime Minister, Yitzhak Shamir, several times with Senator Moynihan. They got along very, very well. We had a number of good meetings. At one meeting, he said to us, I abstained, he said. I abstained on the Egyptian peace treaty. There have been 5 wars with Egypt. I didn't believe that it would last 5 years. I was wrong. It's 7 years now. It's been 45 years now. There's not been one shot fired in battle formally between Egypt and Israel. No one believed that was possible. You would have told me that Pesach programs in Dubai. You would have told me there's Mincha and Yonim and Chol Hamoed and Sukkot in Saudi Arabia. I think you're crazy. I believe that if the Rishonim are destroyed, the leadership is gotten rid of. I believe that from the rivers of the sea, people can live in harmony. I don't believe, I'm not willing to accept the premise that every Arab in Eretz Yisrael is somehow worse than the Germans, the Japanese, the Egyptians, the Saudis. I'm not. So I daven, and I hope, and I end by quoting Rav Moshe Howard, when the OU center of the OU, who in the first week of the war spoke, and he had a very good line, I thought. He said, Avram Avinu does not daven for the Rishayim in Sodom. Let them be zapped. He davens for innocent people in Sodom. I daven for innocent people. Everyone else let them get zapped. Okay, any questions? That was the longest version of the speech. I have a 20-minute version, a 30-minute version, and different types. I did the UN part I added for you. The UN part I do not do with the seminaries. They're confused enough. Okay, any questions? No questions. Come on, someone's not upset, someone's arguing.
Digesting.
We're still sipping.
Someone wants to know more
There's a
about...
question.
What?
We have a question.
Please.
You have,
Your name,
Mayor Pullman,
please.
you have stated quite fairly that you believe that there can be peace in some form at some time with the Hamas people.
I didn't say Hamas. On the contrary.
You feel there's no chance?
I didn't say that. I'm not going to stand here and pontificate and tell people in Israel what they should do. I daven for peace. I say Sim Shalom 3 or 4 times a day in my davening. I daven very hard, Sim Shalom for peace. I leave it to the Master of the universe, for the ultimate bestower of all blessings, to bring peace to this land and to his people. I'm not here to say, there's nothing in the track record of the leadership of Hamas to suggest that they are prepared to make peace. They're prepared to, in exchange for stop shooting, they're exchanged to have a pause or they build more tunnels. They haven't suggested they're willing to make peace.
No, they've never said.
Yasser Arafat wouldn't sign a piece of paper that the president of Indonesia asked me, please. So when we're talking about, I'm not here to defend at least from Hamas. I think I've been very clear what Hamas's track record is. And the question is, if that leadership is destroyed, will we have Germany and Japan? Will we see Saudi Arabia or Dubai? Or will we see a new group coming up supported by rejectionists? But these people are pawns of other people. This was the Soviet Union for decades. I mean, the funniest thing is these people, whether it's Candace Owens on the right in America, Tucker Carlson on the right in America, whether these loony bins on the left in America, you know what I'm talking about. 6 members of Congress, 8 members who are parroting from the world's a horseshoe. The hard right and the hard left drinking from the same sewer. And of course, anti-Semitism plays a big role in it. But it's a combination of 2 things here. This is the only colony in the world. You see, the Chinese can do whatever they want in the areas they occupy that are non-ethnic Chinese, because no one cares. It's non-Asian. It's Asian people and Asian people. In Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, the Buddhists, the peaceful Buddhists, have raped, murdered, and killed 750,000 Muslims in the last decade. You know, anyone chanting Hashkant because again, it's non-European people, it's non-Asian people let them kill each other. But when a people perceives as European people, I know. But they just had some congressional race in New York, where an Ethiopian woman who served in the Israeli Air Force ran for George Santos' seat. And there was a lot of online, even the New York Times hinted to it, is that, well, the Republicans have done it again, they found a phony. She can't be Israeli, she can't be Jewish, she's black. Lady Shomer Shabbat Baron. Doesn't matter. So we're dealing with stereotypes. Fair enough? Yes. Yes, sir.
So leaving aside the colonial paradigm, which is very strong, I'll ask it in the name. It's really Sharansky's question. Sharansky believes that you can't make peace with autocrats and tyrants, and that the
I was
mistake.
smiling because I have a story to tell. I'm trying to sign the statute of limitations up on the story, yeah?
Okay. So his idea is that you can't make peace with the PLO or with the Hamas or even with the Saudis who chop people up and put them in garbage bags, because ultimately the people they're going to produce are going to continue to hate you.
I'm not here to criticize getting in a fight with Nazi Sharansky.
So no,
But I will
I'll
tell
ask the
you what
question.
Danny Kurtzer, the former American ambassador to Israel, said to me. My wife and I had lunch with Danny Kurtzer. We were in southern Israel having a wonderful vacation, visiting. I think we were in Mississippi Ramon. Vivian and I got a phone call from the Orthodox Union. Get back to Jerusalem now. We need someone to have lunch with Kurtzer. I'm having fun with my friends, my family. Get back to Jerusalem now. You're an OU officer. So we go back to Jerusalem, come vacation short.
Was he the ambassador at this
He
time?
was the ambassador to Israel. And over lunch he told us, I'm hoping I'm going to try and friends with Danny here, don't tell him, I'm telling you. This is 20 years ago. He said they said, the biggest damn fool mistake in my career was giving an English edition of Sharansky's Bush copy to George Bush. Because he believed that democratic elections would solve the problems in Iraq and on the West Bank and Gaza. You know, with due respect, democracy works in places where people want democracy to work. You know, there are parts of Africa and Asia that have had one man, one vote, one time. Palestine was one of them. So I don't know. The answer is I don't know. The peace with Egypt has held pretty well. The peace with Jordan has held pretty well. If you want to wait to have democracies throughout the Muslim world, then you can forget about the Trump, you can forget about the Abraham Accords, you can rip up the sign, the agreements. I don't think we can wait for that moment. I agree. In the ideal world, there should be democracies. I agree. Or as Tom Fried in the New York Times once wrote, no, there's never been a war in history between two countries that both have McDonald's. What's that proof? Okay. It's a good question, Shelley. I don't know. Okay. I just wanted to put Tom Friedman once tonight. Yes, sir. Your name?
Marvin, sure.
Yes, sir.
Again, just getting back to this whole thing, you know, like you talk about the end of World War II, you had to root out Nazism and then start anew with the German people. You had to root out whatever imperial Japanese policy and start anew. I mean, it's complicated. Because on one hand, I kind of agree with you because Israel did make peace with the Abraham Accords with moderate, you know, the Gulf states and possibly even now Saudi Arabia. But yet at the same time, with the Palestinians, especially, and probably the Gazans, the part of their culture now is rooted in, like, you know, in Islamic jihadism, you know, like extreme Islamists, if you will. And that has to be rooted out.
So let's talk to that for a
And that's
moment.
even true with the Palestinians.
Let's talk for a moment to that. Let's talk for sort of the German analogy. Do you really believe Nazism was rooted out?
No.
2.5 million Germans were denazified by the United States in a period of 4 weeks.
But wait 1 second. But America was there and was in control and kept everything in checks and balances. And it did. Yes, of course.
Let's talk about Japan. Who was in charge? What do we do? Do we hang the emperor after the war?
The Emperor
No.
No.
The royal minister.
But
They all-
America was in charge, and we.
As Joan Baez, who remembers Joan Baez?
Yeah.
She had a great song. It said 6 million people in the ovens they fried. It's okay, because now God's on their side. I thought it was Joan Baez.
Both together.
Masters of War.
Okay.
No.
You know, so I'm not an expert in this field. Maybe I'm wrong. I think I remember from Joan Baez. I didn't hear either in my life. But I
They
will
sang
say.
together at the Newport Folk.
Oh, they sang together? Okay. Makes sense. But let's try this for size. Let's try this for size. I am not an expert on the Islamic faith, but I got a feeling. I'll tell you a story. In 1991, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. The King of Saudi Arabia called George Herbert, I heard the story from Pat Moynihan, heard it from both the King and George Bush, called George Bush and said, I need your troops to protect me. Bush said, I can't send troops to your country. You don't allow Christians or Jews into your country, man. I don't have that many Muslims in my army. He said, oh, I have a fatwa right here, a fresh fatwa, that says that when heathen come, I don't think he said the word heathen, when a non-Muslims come to protect the holy shrines, they are blessed, they earn great merit. This is a fantastic moment for you. Okay, fine. Moynihan is in Saudi Arabia. I was asked not to come with him. Stayed in Yerushalayim, said I survived. Anyway, so Moynihan's in Saudi Arabia. 6 months later, he says to the king, can you tell me the history of this fatwa? He said, yes. Before I called Bush, I called in the leaders of the Great Mosque, and I told them this is what I want them to write, to sign. And they signed it. Then I told them they could read it. So Moynihan says, well, they'd asked to read it first. And the king chuckled and said, we'd have some new chief imams.
We have what?
Some new chief imams.
Wow.
You know, in 1896, Utah wanted to join the United States. And Congress passed a law saying they can only join the United States if they ban multiple marriages. Within 2 weeks, the leader of the church had a vision from God, and what do you know? So I gotta tell you something. I don't buy this garbage. These people have hijacked Islam. I don't buy they represent Islam any more than the president of Indonesia. I think they represent Islam any more than the moderate Muslim leaders. And I have no problem saying, I'll tell you a story. One of the girls in the college, Turo, is in the elevator, in the subway. The moron gets in the first Friday of the war in a subway elevator in New York City with a big swarthy guy. Girl's crazy. I told her that later. And the man, you Israeli sister? No. You Jewish? Oh, I hope you are. Because what they're doing is awful. It's against the Quran. Allah loves you. This is wrong. And so she said, you know, she was very thankful because do not think. And the people on the college campuses today, those aren't Muslims leading those demonstrations and rallies. A lot of them are Jews, my friends. Let's be blunt. The Soviets manipulated the Muslims, and the extremists manipulated the Muslims. I've seen enough of history, enough changes, I've studied enough of this. I am confident that the right set of leaders, space up programs in Dubai, for goodness sakes. Saudi Arabia, where a Jew could allowed to step 5 years ago, all of a sudden is having Kolomoid Minyanim. You know, you write a new fatwa. I don't buy this business, they're like the Germans and the Japanese. It's in the culture, you lose. But you're right, you gotta lose first. You can't continually kick the tin can down the road and give them another chance to rebuild. But Israel tells Israel what to do. I live in America, do what you have to do, folks. I think my president said it before 100 times. Jake Sullivan, the National Security Council, I shouldn't tell the story, was on the phone with OU leadership, and they said to him, why is all these signals that telling Israel to slow down? He said, hey, we want to keep the Saudis on board, we want to keep the Egyptians on board, we can do one of two things. We can send you unlimited arms, conditions, and we can be a little critical. Or we can just slow down the arms and set conditions like some people want, on the left and right both want. You know, suddenly Israel's supposed to be alone. Nechama Soloveitchik, Aaron's granddaughter, who's the chief spokeswoman for Nikki Haley, said this week that the left-wing Democratic Party and, quote, the new parts of the new Republican Party want Israel under the bus. When you say Israel has to be alone because Israel's a rich country, okay, I'm getting too involved in American politics right now. You don't know who said that. You can look it up later. I'm not telling you. Okay, next question. That was a good question. I hope I gave you a good answer. Any other questions? Yes, Vivian, what?
There's a gentleman over here.
Oh, I thought you had a question, honey.
Not here.
Okay, gentlemen, please ask a question. Yes, what's your
My name
name?
is Joseph Morgan. We're going
Yes,
to
sir.
do a little bit of a bigger geopolitic. It appears that the Russians are beginning to win very seriously against Ukraine.
Yes.
So, what do you think, how will that impact Biden? Is he going to lose both in Ukraine and in the Middle East by letting Hamas win? Or is he going to finally say, you know what, Israel has to win because if the Ukrainians lose to the Russians and the Israelis don't finish Hamas?
I'm not here to get into the nuances of American politics. If you think that Joe Biden has been equivocal in his support, his unlimited arms support, the 450, 460 cargo planes, Biden is losing re-election right now. because of one major issue. Everything else is fluff. Israel. Look at the poll figures. He may lose the Michigan primary.
He buried himself.
He may lose the Michigan primary. When 90% of young Democratic voters are opposed to his policies in Israel, 90%. Where the Michigan primary, where our lovely Palestinian congressman was leading an effort there to have people vote none of the above, uncommitted, which in the most recent poll out of Michigan is running 40%, to show unhappiness with the president's Middle East policies. When he spoke in a church on the sacred occasion of the murder of 11 people in a church, a black church, and white demonstrators, not Muslims, my friend, shouted him down saying, Biden, Biden, you can't hide, you support genocide. So I gotta tell you something. The president's taking a lot of flack for support for Israel right now. God bless him for it. I hope he keeps doing it. Okay.
Can I ask you?
Yes, sure.
Why are there so many young Jews that are becoming so anti-Israel and so pro-Palestinian?
You're asking me a question I'd not really answer. We all have our theories, but I'll throw one at you, okay? If you, I'm speaking at seminaries here, okay? I have spoken, I think, 12 seminaries. Of course, me after my speech. In seminaries, they say, you're the first person who's presented the Palestinians as human beings. You're the first person who explained that they're manipulated and betrayed. No one's told us this before. We thought they just were animals. We thought they were murderers. If you present something as so black and white, and I suddenly discover there's a middle, that's part of it. Part of it is that, I mean, I'm not telling you how to do it, it's Hasbara. I'm not telling you how to do it. But I speak at seminaries where girls with 12 years of yeshiva do not know that Israel was accepted a partition plan in 1947. They do not know that Israel agreed to give back 99% of the West Bank. They do not know Netanyahu agreed to give back Hebron. They think, you know, they live in the era of TikTok and Sesame Street. There's no history. There's no background. I had one girl say to me in a very good Beit Yaakov, you know, it says in the Torah we're commanded to fight the Arabs forever.
But don't you think so the problem is within in Jewish community? Although I don't want to be too criticized, I come from the Michigan. I was the president of a small Reform synagogue, and then later I moved to the conservative. And right after I lost my husband, I made Aliyah. But this identity issues, or like even young generation of the Jews marching along with a bunch of the young students pro-Palestine, I often ask to the rabbis, if someone do not have, after all the money you spent, 12 years, excellent, expensive, I'm going to be sarcastic.
You are terrific.
With
You're
all
saying
the-
everything
yeah.
I've been saying for the last 20 years. I love
Because,
it.
I mean, it's actually obscure and ridiculous at some point.
Man.
I never spend that kind of money for myself
Yeah.
because I don't have children, but with all the money Jewish community spend for the private education, for religious school, Jewish community center, etc., a lot of young people that I met, some of them, they are extreme environmentalists, user-friendly, love technology. They believe anything love humanity, which has turn themselves pro-Palestine. It's a huge identity
We're not
issue.
going to, when you're talking about intersectionality, which is an atrocious, I'm going to end now. I'm going to end with 2 points and we're done. It's been quite long. I think right now the greatest danger we have politically in America, in my opinion, is that on both the left and the right, stuff that was in the sewers has not gone to the mainstream. On the left, intersectionality was in the sewers 5 years ago. It's now accepted. What's intersectionality? That all oppressed groups have to stick together. If I am not sensitive to trans issues, I am against women. If I am against women, I am against Hispanics. I am a racist. You have the whole series of protected minorities. Jews aren't in that group. Jews are a white oppressor, colonial people. Palestinians are the only ethnic group on the planet in that group. The only ethnic group on this planet that has made that list are Palestinians. It's an astonishing thing. It's part of this colonial garbage. And the part of my language, I'm supposed to be a professor, supposed to be very objective when I say things, but it's a colonial argument. So the Palestinians, if you don't accept the Palestinian as a fellow oppressed people, then you're anti-gay and you're anti-trans and you're anti-feminist and you kick puppies and you're a bad person. on the left that has gone from the lunatic fringe to being said today by people with PhDs and congressional spots. On the right, great replacement theory.
I can't hear that.
On the right, great replacement theory.
Okay.
Why is that?
Madison Grant. Who's heard of Madison Grant? I was talking to my wife and Shelley, who's for 6 months away. Not President Madison or President Grant, no, a guy named Madison Grant. Professor at graduate of Columbia Law School, brilliant guy. Boy, you can be brilliant, be so stupid. And he wrote a book on eugenics called The Passing of the Great Race. I said in Beit Yaakov, you can Google it. The principal said, no, they can't. You can Google it. Madison Grant is arguably the most influential racist and anti-Semite of the 20th century. There's a lot of competition for that. Listen to all his credentials. He wrote a book in which he said people evolve like animals. Evolution. Apes become the mud people. That's African Americans, Africans. Then Mediterranean Asians, the Mediterranean people. Alpine people. Then the master race. The master race. The Draconic Aryans. There's a mongrel race. A mud race. Throughout every other country in the world. The Jew. And they use their cleverness to manipulate and destroy the other races by bringing minority groups in to poison the blood. Check out recent use in American politics. Poison the blood of the master race. He convinced Woodrow Wilson. I used to have a lot of respect for Woodrow Wilson, great Democratic president. I don't respect him anymore. Woodrow Wilson signed an executive order in 1917 forbidding a black person to supervise a white person anywhere in the United States government. Over 700 African Americans were fired from their jobs because they were supervising white people. That's now outlawed. It took Harry Truman to rescind that 2 generations later. Madison Grant helped write the Immigration Act in 1924, which kept Jews, Asians, Africans, Latinos out of the United States. He boasted, I've saved America by keeping the Jews out. In 1923, Google this and look at this. You got a love letter from a prison in Germany. I've read your book. It is my new Bible. And a guy named Hitler copied whole parts of it straight, plagiarized it right into Mein Kampf. He could be president of Harvard someday. Anyway, bad joke, bad joke, bad joke. Anyway, the Holocaust. Do you know during World War II, American GIs died in battle because they didn't have blood for them? Because thanks to Madison Grant, there were rules made, you can't use black blood for white people, white blood for black people. And so the American soldiers who died from lack of blood on the battlefield, because it's the wrong blood. It's like giving someone type A, type B blood, they kill them on the spot. So they didn't use. Madison Grant was discredited by the Holocaust. After the early years of the 21st century in France, a man named Camus, not the great, people blame him, not related to and not the great philosopher, wrote a book called The Grand Replacement. It's happening! You can't say Jew. Highest, George Soros, Hadassah, you get the code? Are bringing caravans of people into the United States to replace and the white people and poison their blood, bringing boatloads of Syrians and Africans into Europe to poison the blood of the races. The man who shot up the shul in Pittsburgh. The man who tried to shoot the shul in Poway, California. The man who shot up the Walmart in El Paso, Texas. The guy who committed the massacre in Christchurch, New Zealand, live streaming it, killed 63 people, all quoted from that book. And unfortunately, there was a man named Tucker Carlson, it became his Bible. He said on TV time after time, it got into the mainstream.
Well, how do you explain then the broken border, southern border? Please, you raised it. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but there is a certain issue going on. You're raising
if you think that George Soros and Hadassah...
I think Soros is a bad person.
I'm not a fan of his. I repeat, I'm not here to have this debate.
Anti-defamation.
Okay, fine, okay. Look, I'm not here to have this debate. Really, it's not tonight's topic, but I must say to you, if the only people...
You raised it, you need to...
No, I didn't raise it. The only people you can mention who are responsible for poisoning the blood of America happen to be Jews.
No, I'm not talking about.
No, so we're not at the southern border. I will not, that's
a big issue.
Sir,
and that's one of the concerns about
we have...
And you can't conflate the two issues.
We have...
That's not fair.
I repeat, I know it's not fair. So let me repeat what I said. Great replacement theory is anti-Semitic rubbish. The fact that people in the national presidential campaign took Nikki Haley to shoot it down, and Vivek, whatever his name is, was raising it time after time. The fact that there are people in the mainstream today on the right in America, just the people who remain on the left in America are spouting intersectionality. The same thing's happening on the right, and it's bad for us in both cases, okay? I think that's totally unrelated to the fact that for some reason, one side in America does not want to fix the borders, they want it as a campaign issue. The Republican senators, led by Senator Langhorne of Oklahoma, worked their chishkas out, making a bill that would tighten the border, and guess what? Someone running for president of the Republican Party repudiated it, and it died in the Senate. It was a good bill. It was the exact same bill the Republicans in the House had passed the year before. Enough American politics. You can worship at the altar of Vivid Ramaswamy. I'm sorry. Okay, well, I think we're done. Thank you everybody very much.
Thank you so much.
Wow, I can't believe it's got involved in American politics. Shelley, you never heard me do that here.
It's Lerner's wife.
What?
He's talking about his wife. Works for him.
How was salvation?
Is that he's talking about his wife? Is she married?
Yes.
Her husband is...
I was at Sherbrooke.
Her husband is working for him.
Thanks for being with us.
Just coming up with
My wife gave me my email.
Do you know who this young lady is?
What?
It's Alex.
I was meeting with Helmut Kohl, the Chancellor of Germany. He says, I don't understand why the Jews, this was when Reagan went to Pittsburgh and paid tribute to the Nazi war criminals, and he said, why are the Jews so angry with us? If we hadn't done what we did to them, they wouldn't even have their little state of Israel.
Oh my goodness, that's terrible.
That's the Chancellor of Germany talking to Pat Moynihan. To which Moynihan very...
Unbelievable. See, they took
Okay.
Like you hurt,
We did it, man!
What was the reply?
Well, Moynihan's reply, I don't think I could, he could repeat it in polite company. No, he was quite annoyed.
So what do you expect the Jewish people appreciate about what the Germans
It's a
did?
joke. It's ridiculous.
I mean, of
But
course.
of course it's crazy. But you know what it's like? It's like in the United States this year, there were people there was a whole debate on what everything slavery did for these slaves. We brought over these savages from Africa and we gave them an opportunity. We taught them useful trades and skills. We gave them a country of freedom to live in. And there was a person that actually said that. A major figure in American politics said that. So I mean, well, yes, we have wackos, and then a guy went on television, on the Fox News, and this was a bridge too far. He said yes, and without the Holocaust, there wouldn't be in Israel. The same argument, the same nonsense.
Well, actually, it doesn't make me surprised. This coming October, I'm going to start the Israel.
We Jews have demanded it. There's a woman named Ann Kilbrew. They heard of Harmony Kilbrew, one of the greatest baseball players in American history. He has a sister named Annie Kilbrew. You've seen this picture in my house, Harmony Kilbrew, my office. His sister did the archaeological work to prove Israel's right historic claim to the Galilee and the Golan Heights. She wrote over 400 articles, peer-reviewed articles, about Israel's right to the Golan and the Golan Heights. She is the chair of the political science. She was the chair of the Judaic Studies Department at Penn State. There were Jewish groups that protested. How can you have a non-Jewish woman chairman of Judaic Studies at Penn State? So she's retired.
She's well
They made her emeritus. They made her emeritus. The people complaining against her want one-tenth as pro-Israel as she is. Get it? So let's not go in. We're not any better. We're not any better. We get stupid sometimes. We get stupid
So if
sometimes.
the Palestinians should have a country, where should it be?
That's not my business. I'm not in
I'm just
charge of it.
curious.
I'm not. I think, having worked for the U.S. government for 20 years, I've sat in the room with, having met every prime minister of yours except Moshe Sharett. And yeah, I don't think I ever met Yair Lapid either, who was prime minister for a while. But every prime minister, I met Binger, and I saw him. I spoke to Golda Meir. I spoke to Levi Eshkol. I spoke at great length with Moynihan. I spent hours with Beatty and Shamir. I had lunch, private lunch in Paris and Cheetah. I have more brains to tell you what Israel should do. I've heard the various arguments. I've heard the cases. I know what they would have liked to done. I sat with Netanyahu this summer with the 2009 with the OU leadership. I know what he would like to do. I'm not getting involved in your politics. I live in America. I vote in America. And I kind of gets me a little annoyed with some guys lecturing me about our southern border. The Republicans are the ones that voted down the deal that they had made. But okay, we're not going there. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
The whole question when they talk about Israel to recognize a Palestinian state, and this comment that story that you gave about Chancellor Kohl, it always makes me think of something. There's a misconception that people have that goes very deep, that they think that what created the State of Israel was the Balfour Declaration and the vote in the UN, and they filled in the state. It's like I was saying to someone, I was saying to someone, Israel can't recognize the state of Palestine because they can't recognize something that doesn't exist. We had people working to make Hebrew a living language. We had people settling the land. They don't have any of this.
Let me tell you what Chaim Levi, Shalom Chief Rabbi, who was Israel's president, said to me. I think it was a very good point Chaim Herzog made, and I really got to go have company here. Chaim Herzog said to us, he said, there's two, the United States is one foundation myth, Valley Forge, George Washington good, Nathan Hale good, Benedict Arnold bad, Lafayette good. There's one foundation myth in America. Israel, we have two competing foundation myths. It's what he called the myth of the left and the myth of the right. It was brilliant. He said, as far as Chief Rabbi, said, we Orthodox Jews, and this is true of myself, my rebellion, growing up at the East Day School, we believe the foundation myth of the left. Israel came from Balfour Declaration, anti-Semitism, pan-Slavism, the UN, because the Gemara Ketuvot says we can't have a state here. But the Or Sameach said that the San Remo and the United Nations repealed, gave us a heter. Because it said in the Gemara, we're not allowed to have without Rishut and the Umat Olam. We got the Umat Olam, yay. They're going to sign their independence because of that. They're going to sign because of that. The Rav Soloveitchik, I mean, these are my rebbeim. I know
they're going to sign because of what?
Because of San Remo, because of the League of UN vote.
Gave her heter.
Because the great Or Sameach said, Rav Shach was speaking, I heard from Rav Hershel Schechter at YU, he was at a keynote, Rav Shach was speaking, Rav Shach said, the Or Sameach held, he said in Yiddish, that San Remo was Mevatel Zayin Shlosh Shuas. Some guy says, who's this Sephardic rabbi that can Mevatel Gemara? San Remo. So that's, and then the foundation myth of the right. Israel came from our blood and our fighting, our stepping the land, Jabotinsky, Trumpeldor. And this is 1995, Herzog said to me, he said, I was growing up, and I was growing up also, we believe in the foundation myth of the left. This was the OU position. Read this from the OU, Orthodox Union wrote. By the way, you will not find in the OU diary from those days, Yom HaAtzmaut. You'll find that was Yom HaAtzmaut. I was in plays in day school. This was our big day. I said, having the Shira Tikvah. Remember my line. Okay, it was a big deal. It's hard to explain to you. It's just generational. Then, thanks to the failure of the peace agreement, thanks to the duplicity and of the Arab leadership, things shifted, and the foundation myth of the right is today overwhelming to the point that people are stunned when I say the OU once had this position, right? Right? You're surprised. That's the reality of reaction. I'm not here to tell you what to do. We've gone for a bit. My job is to go back to fight like hell to keep American Jews on our side. Okay? Yeah. I'm not even worried about the going man, I'm worried about the American Jews.
What I meant was that since the Palestinians don't have people working to build,
okay, fine.
That's why we can't...
Again, I'm not getting into that.
Okay.
I'm not getting into that. I think I said it about, I have 6 different versions of what you're saying in different ways. I said, talking about Switzerland, making Switzerland. Look, when Ariel Sharon was pushed by Bush to leave Gaza, and Kanye writes autobiography, they say, Gaza is going to become Singapore. It's in the book, I can show it you. It's going to become Singapore. Okay, well, guess what?
Singapore was created by a man who was a genius. He started out as a left-wing communist. He realized it was wrong. He built Singapore.
Yeah, Singapore is both some very hard-working Chinese people also.
That's also true.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This video is